Hey everybody, I am super excited to be organizing this year's Tee Off for Testicular Cancer in Norfolk, Virginia. That's my hometown, or close to my hometown. It's going to be Friday, April 18th of this year. It's going to be at 8:30 a.m. shotgun start with a 4-person best ball scramble with breakfast and lunch provided, contest holes, drawing, and lots of great prizes. So I hope to see all the survivors that can possibly be there out there. It's going to be a great time. Sign up on our website. You can find it under the events tab, and looking forward to Tee Off for Testicular Cancer 2025. The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. I'm really excited about today's guest. I've got Arjun Sud. I think I said that right, Arjun. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. It's so nice to finally meet you. You know, you've been an inspiration and a huge part of my journey. So it really is a pleasure to finally do my part.
Oh, I mean, it means a lot that you would say that. And I know that you applied to be on back in October or April of last year. So I just want to put a note out there, anybody listening, we've got a backlog of guests, which is a good thing. But, you know, unfortunately, that's testicular cancer survivors that are out there. But, you know, thanks everybody for holding on and waiting your turn. And I'm glad Arjun is having his turn right now. So Arjun, before we get into your testicular cancer story, tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I grew up in India primarily, but I've had the pleasure of living around the world. So I spent a little bit of time in London and lived in Vietnam for a few years. But, you know, came to the States for college and have had the privilege of, you know, living in the tri-state area, then moving to the Midwest, then moving to Arizona, and really realizing how important it is to move back to the tri-state area because no one else seems to know what a pizza looks like. So, you know, yep, that's me in a snippet.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, we know you had testicular cancer, but before that, I mean, all those places you lived, you know, was it something that you learned about in school in India or in London or Vietnam or, you know, is it something you even knew about before you had it?
Yeah. So, you know, actually, no, not at all. And my first 12 years of education, right, through were in India. And the thing about India is it's, you know, very progressive in many ways, and it certainly is growing in that sense. But the problem is sex and things related to genital organs are very closeted, right? Like you don't talk to your parents about it out of respect for them, and you don't necessarily learn about it in school. So I remember this, like when we were finally getting the talk in seventh grade, women or the girls in the class got taken out for this special chat, and the guys just had a free period because no one wanted to talk to us about it. So, you know, it's a lot of self-discovery. You know, the internet's a great teacher. But no, I knew absolutely nothing about testicular cancer till it actually hit me.
Wow. Okay. So yeah. So I know that you found yours in the shower. So tell me about that. I mean, not having the background of, you know, learning about it in India or, you know, how did you know to do the check?
Yeah. Yeah, so you know, actually, I didn't, and I am a hypochondriac by nature, and so you know, I always joke and tell people it's a trait I got from my grandmother, who always, you know, she loved the doctor more than she loved me, but we were still great. So you know, I was in the shower one day, and I was just, you know, basically soaping myself, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? That does not feel normal. And, you know, being a hypochondriac, you know, Dr. Google always tells you you're dying one way or the other, right? So you go, wait, this thing feels hard. This is not moving. What is going on here? And so immediately kind of all my alarm bells went off. And I was, you know, talking to my wife and I'm like, hey, can you just see if this feels normal? And then, you know, I had one of my best buddies from college was actually staying over at my place at the time, as luck would have it. So, you know, we're like brothers now. We've known each other since 2007. I was like, hey, can you go to the bathroom and come back and tell me if you feel anything like this at all? And he's like, well, no, I couldn't find anything like that. So, you know, it was purely coincidence. And I always tell people it literally is the shower that saved my life.
Yeah. And being, you know, the hypochondriac that you say you are, I mean, when you felt that,
Yeah.
what does that do to you mentally?
That was very dark, right? Like I'm a very upbeat, cheerful person. I'm proud to say that, 99.9% of the time my mental health is actually better than most people I know. But the the hypochondriac part is really the one thing. It's my Achilles heel. So immediately your mind starts racing, right? And so you're googling stuff, asking ChatGPT, hey, I felt this, looked like this, blah blah blah. What do you think? And obviously you're getting back all these hits, and then having a business background and a MBA and masters and whatever, I'm just kind of doing the analytical correlation in my mind about like, okay, so like this is the generic answer, but what percentage of this is actually true to me? And yeah, that just didn't sit well at all. And so I actually sat down and I'm like, okay, if this is it, I need to have a game plan. And the next morning when saw my doctor, my PCP.
How were you able to get in to see your doctor like next day? Was it a sick appointment, I guess, or
I told him I'm coming whether he's gonna take me or not. And I said I will, be most grateful. And being the kind of guy that he is, he said, all right, I mean, if it means that much to you, I'll squeeze you in. And he did, and much to his credit.
what were the next steps for you after you got into your PCP and presumably
Yeah.
he did a little testicular exam? What'd
Yeah.
you do next?
Yeah, so this is like really interesting because he effectively, he did my exam and whatever, and he said, "Look, the truth is, I don't feel anything, and even still, if you are so worried about it, I want you to just get it checked out, just in case. Can't hurt, right?" So I'm going, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go get this checked out. Like if and he went over my testicles a second time, and he's like, okay, I feel like a little something. I don't know what it is. Just go check. So seriously, I called the imaging company, and they're like, okay, no problem, happy to help. You can come on the 26th of this month, which literally, I know this because I had Super Bowl, and then the 1st of March, somewhere around there, hit. I bought an Apple Vision Pro, so I was on an extreme high like the previous day, right? And then like I get this bomb drop on me the next day. So roughly it's the 1st of the month. They're saying come 26 days later, and I go like, no way. I'll drive to New York if you want me to, but who can I see like now? And I'm actually driving to the closest one while negotiating with the guy on the phone about where I can go. And
This is with
yeah, so
insurance or your doctor?
oh no, oh no, 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 no. This is with the medical imaging
Okay.
company that I was gonna see. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, you had your ultrasound, and then what was the waiting period when you saw your results? I mean, what was that like?
Um, so I'm specifically gonna shy away from saying where I got my imaging and who did it, right? But I will tell you this: being as wired at in this area, as I'm getting the image, I was I'm a film guy. I love film, and I watch a lot of films. And I'm watching my imager's face closer than, and I'm like thinking, all right, I've watched these cool videos about how the FBI and the CIA do like, body language analysis. Like, what do I think this guy is like thinking? And then I start like talking to him and I'm like, so, like, what do you think? And he's like, I'm not allowed to say it. And I'm like, come on, man. Like you have to give me something. Like, look at me. I'm gonna faint. And he's like, okay, I see something. And I'm like, you see something? Okay, what do you see there, right? And so he basically told me everything that I needed to know without actually saying the words that he's not supposed to say. And so at that point, like I walked in there and I dragged myself out. I was in like I was saying, it was just a little dark, right? But got home, spent the entire day looking up TC doctors. First thing you do, right? I mean, I didn't even make it to my car, and I'm like, what is the mortality rate on this? And because I'm young, I've got my family, I've got a life ahead of me, and you get slapped with something you know nothing about. Because let's face it, TC is super rare. So I'm like, okay, well, like let's learn about this. So I'm sitting there, I remember calling some like cousins that I'm very close with and just confiding in them saying, look, what do you guys think? Like, do you think I have it? And they're like, yeah, you should probably get ready for like some pretty bad news. But I mean, then found my doctor literally that night, scheduled my orchiectomy. No, no, no. Then scheduled going in to see him. I saw, a doctor at the University of Pennsylvania, and he is a urologist, not an oncologist. So he's a he does prostate cancer, but he really doesn't do. So he did my orchiectomy. I walked into his office 3 days later, because by this time it was like Friday, and Monday was the first appointment. And I go in on Monday, and and I'm just like, what's up? And so I'll just tell you, it's the first time, someone's kind of looked at it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? And then the assistant that had come in, she was very nice. She's like, yeah, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I think you have it. You should get this removed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, anyways, resiliency kicked in. I'm like, all right, we're gonna fight this. We're gonna do everything we can, right? Hopefully, I've caught it early. Hopefully, whatever. And I'm like, so what time tomorrow can I be in for surgery? And they're like, tomorrow. This is you, Ben. You realize, what? So I'm like, no. I mean, I really have to go in tomorrow. Like, this thing's gonna spread. And they're like, no, 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 no. Look, I'll get you in sooner than anyone I know, but it won't be till next week. And I'm like, doctor, next week. Anyways, I lost that one, had my orchiectomy the following week, and then kind of went into, meet my oncologist.
Yeah. So, okay. So, the period with the ultrasound, you get that kind of vague news. What's your wife thinking at this time? Are you sharing this with her, or are you kind of keeping it close until you know more about it?
My wife's actually a lot more calm than I am. And she's just like, okay, well, that's not great, but we'll deal with it. My wife lost her mother about 4 years ago, 3 years ago to cancer as well. And so, they've kind of gone through the different journeys, and so she was accustomed to hearing this. It wasn't, something like, for many people, it's the first time.
Yeah. You mentioned your cousins. I want to go back to like you talking about in India, like it wasn't so talked about or and everything. I mean, do you have family back in India? And when you share this with them, like, was it kind of taboo? They didn't want to talk about it, or were they more keen to talk about it?
Yeah. So, I'm really, really lucky. Like, Stephen, God's been very kind to me. And by the way, I grew up with Hinduism, was largely atheist, and truth be told, for the journey I've had, found religion through this time. And one of the greatest gifts I've ever got is the strong relationship I have with my mom and dad. They are my best friends and have been supportive through thick and thin, and this was no different. Um, when times like this come around, uh, it's hard. How do you tell your parents you have cancer? I mean, that's devastating. And my parents and I genuinely are, I'm so proud to say, so close. So you feel so much pain for each other, but you're not in a proximity to comfort each other, if that makes any sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, I took a very direct approach. I called them. It was very early in the morning. I just remember that, they were barely waking up, and I felt really bad. But I mean, how do you tell someone? You can't allay them into it. So I just said, look, I found out I have testicular cancer, and I know it was very, very hard on my parents. I know that for a fact. But I found in them the greatest and wisest counsel that I could. And I think that that's so important because, oops, that thing's still on, sorry. But it's just really important to have decision makers you trust, and then decision makers that are emotionally removed from you know, from the direct impact. Not that it hurt them any less, but my judgment to some extent was a little clouded, whereas I thought they could see a little clearer than I could.
Yeah. Are they, where are they geographically? Are they in the US now? Or are they
Oh no,
elsewhere?
they're in India.
Okay.
So yeah, so they're based in India, and so I had to I found all this out, and then I had to just shut up about it, and I called them, probably at like 8 a.m. their time. So yeah, that's why it took a little while.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about the orchiectomy. So you had it a week after your consult. Let's talk about like the recovery.
Yeah,
What was your experience like
yeah,
with, with the surgery?
yeah. So I've had my tonsils removed. I've had a hernia repair. But the orchiectomy was really smooth, and my doctor was really wonderful. But and I'm also someone that tries not to medicate myself unless I need it. So they gave me some really, really strong stuff. And I took it right out of the orchiectomy because I'm like, I'm probably not thinking straight. Let me just get through the night, and then tomorrow morning I can decision. And I didn't take anything other than maybe a Tylenol or an Advil. I've never ever experienced. I've never noticed those muscles working, and I've never experienced the kind of pain I did that one day. I remember going to the bathroom and brushing my teeth, thinking, "Oh, I'm okay," and then literally almost passing out. And I've just never had that happen. Beyond that, like recovery was touchwood pretty okay. To anyone listening to this, if I still have your attention, I think frozen peas are literally your best friend. And then the other thing that seriously I would tell someone to consider is like get a cane, get something to sit up and lie down. Whatever it is that just to assist when you're using that muscle, so to say. And then lastly, knowing that my orchiectomy was upcoming after I had met my urologist, I went to a furniture store and I bought myself a nice power recliner where I spent a lot of recovery. Because, I mean, this one pushes you up and lays all the way down. So it has both sides of that coin and really helps you in standing up without making your muscles do as much of the work.
Wow. That's awesome. And great advice
Yeah.
with the peas and the cane.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
once you had your pathology, which by the way, if you remember your pathology, I'm going to ask
Hmm.
you what that was, but,
Yeah.
what was the next steps? I know you mentioned, I think at the time you applied, you were considering, carboplatin. Did you end up doing that?
Yeah. So that was the real big one. So if you don't mind, like, why don't we go over my pathology and I'll
Yeah.
kind of weave that into my so effectively I was diagnosed with God's grace with a stage 1B, right? And I was 1B because I had ready testi invasion. Oh, actually, it was seminoma, pure seminoma, 4 centimeters. So I was literally on that line, right? Because they say four and under is good, 4.1 and above increases your risk. I had ready testi invasion, no lymphovascular invasion, thank God. Um, and then, essentially, the margins were clear. So, I'm sitting here and again, I think to myself like, wow, what am I in for the next couple of months? And, that's the time where I'm a people person at heart. I love people. And I don't I don't mind, being an open book when I have to. So I joined Facebook group, which was, I mean, my God, I walked out with like 50, 60 more friends at the end of last year. What a pleasure that was. I met some really brave people. And then, someone recommended your podcast to me, and I've been an avid listener because it's, both a huge support, but also an inspiration. So, in doing this, I was listening to a lot of people that, as I'm sure you would affirm, will say, well, I did surveillance and then suddenly, it came back after X amount of period. Now, I realize this carboplatin decision isn't easy because it doesn't mean it's not coming back. It means it's significantly reduced. But, I talked to I talked to this guy, and by the way, I've kind of vetted with these people that I can share this stuff. So so this guy Corey, I made friends with him, and he said, "Look, I didn't do it, and then it came back, and then I did BP, and then it came back, and then I did stem cell and high dose, and it just sucked. And I wish to some extent I would have been more serious in that consideration." So eventually, after talking to a number of people, and I met people that found out in Vietnam and then flew back to England, which is where they were from, or many people in America, and I joined the British group as well because I'm like, hey, more information is power, right?
Yeah.
On Facebook. So so anyways, I talked to my parents daily about this, and I said like, what do you think? And they're like, well, we've read these studies, and I'm like, yeah, I've read all these studies. And they're like, it doesn't give you a zero. It just reduces it. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, if I do carbo, I can sleep better at night. And God forbid if I have to deal with the devil later down the line, at least I can say to myself, like, hey, I gave it the hardest kick I could. And, that was, I never want to look back and say, oh, shoot. So, the final reasoning was one dose, and this is the huge distinguisher for me. One dose of carbo, which is 1 hour, beats 3 cycles of BEP. And something that was a learning for me is I thought, BEP is like you do it like 3 days and that's it, 3 days, 1 week apart. Nope, it's 5, 6 days and then, a break. So really the amount of bags you get, the days you're in hospital getting treated is significantly more than the 1.5 hours that you're sitting in a chair taking this extra step of prevention.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you about that decision, which you already answered, but I mean, it is a tough decision to make. And I think, I think your sentiment about, wanting to make sure that if it did come back, you knew that you did everything that you could. And especially, being a self-proclaimed hypochondriac, I think probably, I mean, you could say it better
Yeah.
than I could, but I mean, rather than having to live with, is it back? Is it back? I mean, now you know that you did what you
Yeah.
could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've given myself the strongest chance that I could to beat it the first time. And that was really important to me because, I have a whole full life to live and I don't want to have to deal with this. When I moved to, I went to Drexel, and when I went to Drexel in 2007, I'll never forget it. The first friend I ever made, she was so nice and very smart girl. She studied. She was a cancer doctor, and she was specifically studying. I think it was like triple negative breast cancer, and it took her life, man. Like 2 years ago, she died of like literally the subspecies or whatever that she studied, and she put a lot of effort into trying to beat it. So I feel like, when we've been given these odds and have been blessed, we need to do our part in trying to aid in that prevention rather than cure.
Yeah. Let's talk about your experience with the chemo. I mean, how fatigued were you? I know that I think you work at a bank. I mean, were you able to work through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, I'm no longer with that bank, but just in case, I hope my manager isn't listening. It wasn't too bad. It was it wasn't really that bad at all, So we've got three young kids we've been blessed with, and my wife was, busy taking care of them. So I, called my best friend from college, and I'm like, hey man, like, do you want to just come and like stay at my place for 2 weeks and keep me company in case something goes wrong? And he's like, yeah, no worries. So, I mean, I literally, okay. So when I decided to get chemo, I talked to Dr. Einhorn. I talked to, the head of germ cell tumor at MSK. And I had, of course, talked to my own doctor, Dr. David Vaughn, who is the nicest human being I've ever met. What a gem of a person. And he said, Arjun, don't do it. And I said, but Dr. Vaughn, like I'm thinking about my mental health. And then, the chemo day came, and right before I got it, he pops into the office. He's like, Arjun, this is my last chance. I have to come in and say this to you. Don't do it. Like, most people are cured. But the thing is, Stephen, right? Like again, when you join these Facebook groups, for better or worse, like one thing that doesn't strike you initially is that you're part of an echo chamber of people that are there because they're going through it, right? We people that typically are cured will spread their wings and fly as they should. They shouldn't let this hold them hostage for the rest of their life and give back in whatever way if they choose to at all. Um, but anyways, so all this to say, I'd prepped myself. I didn't know what was going to happen. I talked to a lot of people, and what I did is I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I ask for like a 30-minute phone call or a 10-minute phone call?" And I swear to God, there's nobody in that group, whether it's in the British group or the American group, that said no. Every single person said, I'd be happy to help. Maybe not now. Can you call me in 15 minutes? Whatever it is. But I had a great support system, and some people had some effects, some people didn't. I felt like I got it, and my wife and I we went for hot pot that night right by UPenn, and then got back the next morning. I had the hiccups, but I spent the rest of it. I've got a movie theater, like a professional movie theater I've kind of built, and I just gamed and watched movies and had the time of my life. I didn't know what to expect, so I actually did take time off of work. In retrospect, I didn't need it, if truth be told. But I also, in the event that I was immunocompromised or there were challenges or I didn't want to take the risk, so I just said screw it. Like work's just not worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, hey, time off was deserved with what you were going through. So even if you weren't
Thank you.
feeling terrible, I mean, having the break from work was deserved.
Thank
So
you.
this was all last April, I believe. So we're now
Yes.
about 8 months, maybe nine by the time this comes out. From that, how have things been over the last 8 or 9 months?
Yeah. So, you know, obviously the key term, and anyone listening to this will relate, is scanxiety, right? So like you're okay, and then like it's scan time, and like oh my gosh, you're sweating bullets. And another really good friend I made, his name's Brandon. He went through non-seminoma, and he's just been like, I remember the night I met him, he's very religious, and he prayed. He's like, can I pray for you? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And on the morning of my scan, I actually called him and I said, look, man, I'm just looking to understand what your first experience was like, and like what can I expect? Do you think I'm gonna be okay? And I'm just really being much more vulnerable than I typically am. And then, Stephen, I go to the hospital, and for whatever reason, there's a global Microsoft shutdown. So
Uh,
after working myself up to this, I'm literally told, I'm very sorry, but nothing's working at the hospital. And by the way, it wasn't just the hospital, it was banks. It was like, I'm sure if you look back in October, you'll know what I'm talking about. A huge outage. And so, like, you've psyched yourself up for it. It's your first scan, you're really sweating bullets. And they send me home and they're like, well, come back, sometime next week.
Mm.
It's just like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to, do this twice.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I went in, I met Dr. Vaughn. He in the nicest way possible told me I need to start working on losing weight, which I do. I used to be 120 pounds when I came to college, so you know freshman 15, and it stood. But anyways, I've been blessed because I it was everything was clear, it was good, and really that's all one can hope for. So everything since then has been good. um, on a personal note, it taught me how important it was to prioritize my time and the things I do, right? Because when you take for granted that you're living, you just go about your day and anything that comes about. But I've really learned to take a moment of pause and say, like, did I spend my week in a way that was worth it? And what makes it really worth it is my children. Like, I just get so much joy out of spending time with them. It's incredible. So I focus a lot more on that and focus on things that actually matter to me, and not just the rut of life that we get caught up in. So that's been good.
That's amazing. Are your kids at an age where they understand what you went through, or are they still too young for that?
No, no, not at all. It's my oldest is 6 going on 7. And then we've got a 4-year old, well, 3 going on 4, or, my wife would say he's 13. Uh, and we've got a daughter that's almost 2. Um, but, I'll tell you, like, the I will protect them from knowing about this for now, but there will be a day where I'll have to have the chat with them because, I've seen the genetic correlation between, parent and child, and I want to make sure that, God forbid, we're at least looking out and we're kind of catching things early if the time ever, hopefully never, but if it were to arise, you know. But I'm just gonna throw this in. I didn't tell my kids. They just knew I wasn't feeling good. And I remember there was this one day I was just kind of lying in bed, a little bit tired, not much, and my 6-year old just drew this picture. It's just a picture of him and I holding hands, and he just said, like, "I love you. Thank you for being a great dad." And I literally bawled my eyes out, man. And I'm man enough to admit it. It was such a moment for me, and I mean this genuinely. It was in that specific moment, and I still have this thing where I just figured out what exactly it is that I am here to fight for. You know, I love life, but that was a real moment in my journey for me.
That's a very, very sweet story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So, looking ahead, you say India is kind of becoming more progressive. I mean, do you have any kind of desire to kind of change the tide? If you go back to visit your parents, spread the word
Hmm.
there, or, you say you're an open book, so I'm sure you've
Hmm.
told all your friends in your community.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. Like, one thing that's really important to me is to, like, give back for all that so many have so generously given to me. So, whether it's on Reddit or Facebook groups or otherwise, I'll give my number out to people and I'm like, hey, like, call me, let's chat. I know you're not feeling great about this. Many times, right? It's people that are like, oh my God, like, what is this? Do I have it? And I can relate to that. So, all that to say, um, you know, I'll give strangers my number because I want to be a pillar of support to whatever extent they will let me be. And I made some really good friends through this. But when I found out, when it was actually officially confirmed, pathology came back, I actually wrote a long post publicly on Facebook and said, "Hey, I just want to let everyone know I have this, and I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing this because if anyone else is going through this or has any doubts, please reach out to me because I'd like to help you catch it early in the same way I think I was so lucky to have done myself."
That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing. I've probably seen you on Reddit. Hopefully you're not downvoting my
Yeah.
stuff. Reddit's kind of a harsh place, but
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. You know,
is there anything else that you want to add that I didn't ask about?
yeah, I think, look, I think for people that are going through this, you have to find your inspiration. And I think that that comes both intrinsically from the life that you live, but look outside of that and other people that have braved disease, right? So let me share like just two examples. Um, I'm a huge music entertainment guy, as I've already shared, but one of the people that I think is extremely, extremely inspirational, and it's one of my favorite movies is Bohemian Rhapsody, right? Rami Malek playing Freddie Mercury, frontman for Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Many people don't know this, but Freddie actually didn't tell people that he was dying of AIDS. And actually, the letter that he shared, he wrote the day before he died. He told his band in the very end, and or much later into it at least. But there's a song, and you can look it up. It's called "Days of Our Lives," and that was Freddie was literally on the verge of the end, and he said, "You know what? If I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go rock and roll style," and basically worked and put this thing out. And he looks nothing like the Freddie Mercury we know, but great song, great words, you know. And it's inspiring, and it's inspiring because testicular cancer is the cancer that is the role model. Our prognosis, fortunately, because of Dr. Einhorn and so many more, is not maintenance, it's cure. So if people like Freddie fought this to the end, knowing that he didn't have that opportunity, we owe it to ourselves to, go ahead and brave through it. And it's hard. I don't mean to I never mean to disregard that. But I just think, at least for me, it gave me a lot of strength. And then just one last one is, being Indian, Americans enjoy their football, Indians enjoy our cricket, and soccer. But, from a cricket standpoint, which is a national religion in itself, um, it was back in the early 2000s, there was a very famous cricketer that led India to the victory of the World Cup, which is huge, right? Because it's very competitive. And what people learned there at the very end is this guy was spitting blood as he was, kind of running up and down and doing all these things. And his name is Yuvraj Singh. And, a lot of people knew he had cancer. What nobody knew at the time, and I learned only now, is that he had testicular cancer. It basically had metastasized into his lungs. And so Yuvraj won the World Cup for India, literally is credited with that, carrying the team. And then at the end of it, once that was done, flew down to IU, saw Dr. Einhorn, got treated, kicked its ass, and went back, So I just think that perspective and inspiration are two very important things. And, I just hope that through all the challenges that people that listen to this are going through, stories like this help them because, guys, if you're listening to me, you're going to be okay. Just be smart about the checkups, make sure you stay on top of your health, do the monthly, self checks, and life will work itself out. I really believe that.
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing both of those stories. You mentioned that you'll give your number out. I don't want to put your number in the description of this, but where can people find you if they want to ask you for your number?
Yeah, actually, it's I was gonna say I'm on Facebook, right? Arjun Sud, that's SUD. Um, I was prepared for this and I was gonna offer it to you. You're welcome to edit it out if you want, but to anyone that would like to chat, it's 215-690-1271. That's my Google voice line. So, I mean, I can turn it off when I'm going to bed. But, if you're comfortable with it, you certainly have my permission to get the word out. Because frankly, I just really want to help people. I think this is a team sport. It's a club that no one wanted to be a part of. But, in our own small way, we want to carry the torch that you hold and, are lighting so brightly with this podcast.
Well, thank you. And Arjun, thank you so much for sharing your story on It Takes Balls. It was a great story and look forward to hopefully meeting one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to it. Which city are you based in? Just curious.
I'm in Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, not too far. Not too bad. Okay. I'm in South Jersey, right outside Philly. So, you have my information. Please look me up if you're ever this way.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
I actually accidentally lied to you. I've been planning this golf tournament so much that I said Norfolk. I'm in Virginia Beach, but Norfolk is Norfolk's the big city, but Virginia Beach is right next door. But yeah, this golf tournament in Norfolk, Virginia is in the forefront of my mind. So sorry about that.
Well, good luck, my friend. I hope you have a couple of hole-in-ones,
Yeah, I hope so.
Cheers.
Arjun,
Well,
thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story and good luck to you and to everyone out there. Like I said, we're a team and just root for the team. But lovely meeting you. Thanks for this time.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Testis Cancer. We're on Facebook at Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation.